Black Lives Matter, things like that. A lot of, people are saying that there's a lot of racism in America.
Took the call, excited to help this woman, and she says, "Can you get me someone who speaks English?"
When I hear voodoo, I think of the dolls.
Witches and wizards have taken the form of cats to attack people.
We're immigrants, so we will be treated different no matter what we do. Welcome back to the American Dream podcast. I'm here in the studio with Dami from Nigeria. And Dami, before we start this interview, I have to make 3 important announcements. Okay. First of all, I apologize for my voice. I never sound like that. Today I sound like a man because yesterday we had an event and we were sitting right by the band that was super loud. So everybody who came out and talked to me, I had to yell to them, literally everything I said. So this morning I woke up, sounded like a smoker. So I apologize to my listeners. Second, announcement is that this is the 30th episode of the 4th season of the American Dream podcast.
That is amazing.
And this morning I woke up and saw that we hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Wow.
10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yay!
That's amazing.
So shout out to everyone who is watching us. Thank you for your support. Thank you to every single guest that I have interviewed. Thank you for sharing your journey. I appreciate it all. People who know me personally, they know how much I care about this podcast. It's like my baby that I'm raising and taking care of every single week. So thank you. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. Okay, enough of this sentimental moments. Let's dive straight into it. Share a little bit about your background. Where in Nigeria are you from, Dami?
I am, so I was raised in Lagos. And Lagos is really it's on the western part of Nigeria. And
by the ocean.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to live in Lagos, basically, because it's the city. It's got like a lot of jobs. I say a lot of jobs very lightly, but in comparison to like the rest of the country, yeah. It's people come to Lagos for a better life, basically. So I was raised in Lagos. That's where my parents lived. However, my dad, he's also from the western part, but he's from a different state. It's called Osun State. And it's a Yoruba tribe. And then my mom is from Delta, which is really more on the southern part of the country. But she's part of the Igbo tribe.
Interesting.
So I've got a mix of cultures, but I was raised in a big city, Lagos.
Yes. Yesterday, when I was preparing for this interview, I researched that city specifically because it's the biggest one. And I was like, I don't know, but what are the odds? Maybe she is from this city. And I watched some travel shows and I saw that it actually looks very different from any other big city that I have ever saw.
Yeah. If you've ever been to New York?
No.
Okay. So in terms of characteristics and like overcrowded traffic.
Yes. Big traffic.
Just the craziness of it. That's like the closest measure.
Yeah. Just maybe not as clean is what I saw yesterday.
Yeah. Well, New York isn't.
No, New York is not. No, there's like rats there and stuff.
Coincidentally, I was just in New York last week and I remember just like the noise, the traffic, I was like, how do you all survive in this town?
Stressful.
Literally the same emotions I feel when I'm in Lagos, I was feeling in New York.
Yes, absolutely. So who decided to move to America?
Around 2006, my late dad and I, we had started talking about the possibility of me going to med school in the U.S., but we hadn't gone full steam into planning. But we knew that was, I was finishing my bachelor's degree and we wanted that to be sort of like the next step because I wanted to be a doctor. I never did end up becoming a doctor. But so that conversation was happening and I was going to come as an international student. And then early 2007, I think it was, a family friend of mine decided to include my name in a diversity visa lottery program. Have you heard of the diversity visa lottery?
Never.
Okay, so the USCIS or the U.S. immigrations, they And I think they still have that program. It's just restricted in certain countries. So I don't think it exists anymore in Nigeria. But they had that program, and it was basically like playing the lottery. You put your name in and you hope that your name gets selected. So this person went ahead and included my name amongst like 20 other people. And I, at the time, thought that this was a waste of time. I was like, whoever told you that works deceived you, like it never works. Well, out of everybody that he submitted, I got a letter in the mail saying, congratulations, you're on your way to becoming an American citizen.
What?
And I thought it was fraud. Didn't touch it. I said, nope, this is definitely
This is a
fraud.
scam.
This doesn't work. So I ignored it and ran into him about 2 weeks later, brought it up, and he's like, we're going back to your house. I'm going to look at the letter. And he opened it and he looked at me and he goes, no, you won. So that's how I moved. And I moved. So when I went through that process, I immediately became a legal resident and then became eligible for my citizenship 5 years after.
Wow,
So
what an
that's how I moved.
inspirational story. That something you didn't believe is going to work actually worked.
Yep.
How did your friends react to this, Dami? Because you were by yourself, right? It was only you that was able to move to America.
Yeah, and I was young. I was just turning 20 when I moved. And so that was, it was hard for my parents, but it was also hard for me as a young person coming to the U.S. by myself. We had some extended family in Maryland, so I moved and lived in Maryland, for the first 5 years before I came to Springfield. But even with extended family, you're still, like, I quickly learned in America, you're on your own. There's no real community. And that was one of my, like, initial rude awakenings was you're on your own, figure it out, just take care of yourself.
And this is why I'm doing this podcast, by the way, too. Because some immigrants, like you said, you come here and you're on your own, but maybe this podcast will help some other people make some friends, some connections. For example, maybe somebody who is from Nigeria who just moved here, watching this, here locally, and they're like, oh, I want to meet Dami. I'm also from Nigeria. I have no friends, no family here. I would love to, speak our language and maybe, dress up in our authentic clothes and dance and listen to our music and things like that. So, do you remember your first couple of days in America? What did you think of America when you just landed here?
So I landed in Baltimore and it was October 31st, 2008.
Halloween.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was weird because Halloween wasn't a thing that we celebrate, in Nigeria. A lot of people, I think for me, it was a big shock because I was coming from a country where things like voodoo and, idols, those are like real things that people practice, witchcraft, all of those things. So I didn't really take it lightly. Coming in and seeing such a display
demons and things like that.
And we still kind of struggle with it because, now I've got a son and, he wants to celebrate Halloween because he's never witnessed the things that we saw growing up. And so it's kind of figuring out how do you let him be a kid without participating in something that I don't believe we should be involved in.
Yeah, so huge cultural difference. Yeah. Starting like the first day you landed here, you saw everybody dressed up in skeletons and demons, and you're like, weird.
Yeah, and then it was also icy.
Oh, yeah.
So that was another part that wasn't fun for me. I woke up the next morning and I did not realize what I had signed up for. I stepped out of the house and didn't have appropriate shoes, and guess what? I went down. I fell on the ice.
Oh my God.
So that was like my welcome to America.
Welcome to America, fall down on ice.
I was like,
see
are you
demons
sure
everywhere.
You just landed your butt on the ground.
So did you have any expectations in general when you were moving to America? Did you see any movies? Did you like prepare yourself mentally that this is what I will see when I will move here?
I don't know that I had expectations. I mean, I knew that there was going to be a big change, but I really can't say that I had expectations. I remember, as I shared, one of the very first things I quickly noticed was the lack of community. So that part of it, I think it was a result of my lack of anticipation for that change. Because in Nigeria, we have such community that, you know, even now, like I haven't lived in the U.S. for as long as I have, almost 2 decades at this point. I still have a huge community back home that I still interact with very often. It's just community is a lot. There's a lot more community there, and when you come here, it's hard to make that transition and realize, you know, I went for months, years, even didn't know what my neighbors look like.
Yeah. People don't walk on streets either.
Yeah.
Everybody's just driving.
And so that part of it was really, I remember all of my first year, I so desperately wanted to go back because of that.
Why didn't you?
Well, for one, I was in school. You know, so I had a reason to stay here. But then the other part of it was I had the green card, which had its own stipulations. You could only be outside the U.S. for less than 6 months.
Yes.
Or 6 months or less.
Yeah.
If you went past 6 months, then you went out of status, and then you couldn't be eligible for your citizenship. So there were certain stipulations, and so school and maintaining my status were 2 things that like kept me here.
So you wanted to stay here and fight for your American dream. What was your initial challenge, Dami?
I mean, the community aspect of
the
it.
community. Any language barriers?
No.
No, you spoke English?
Yeah, because in growing up in Lagos, English was the universal language, but so we have over 500 languages in Nigeria.
Yes.
And so because of that, it's important to have the common language for everyone. And English is that language. So growing up, going to school, English is what we spoke. I think in terms of language, if I were to say what my initial challenge was, it would be just the pace and like how fast I felt like people spoke when I came here. But not so much, you know, just the lack. It wasn't the lack of understanding. It was more the difference in pace and having to, hey, you know, I want to hear what someone's saying correctly. So I would often, you know, ask them to repeat themselves or to go a little bit slower.
What about Americans? What did you think of American people? You've never met them before in your life, and you landed here, and you said you haven't even seen your neighbors for like 10 years at first. So what was your first American, you know, experience with an American person like?
So I have 2 layers of culture shock. I have to point that out because, you know, when you move from Lagos to Maryland, that's one layer of culture shock. And that version is different from when you move from Maryland to Springfield. You see what what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Very different. So when I moved to Maryland, although I had some culture shock, there was a lot of diversity. So by default, I felt like I was getting all the opportunities to interact with all kinds of people. So there wasn't like, you know, there wasn't like one certain group that I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm engaging with this group all day, every day, that you know, I have to learn something. I felt like I was learning so many things all at once. And it was great because it was almost like I was getting a crash course on diversity, you know? And so I feel like that part of it was, you know, fascinating to me. I really enjoyed having access to the variety when I came, especially, you know, when I was at work, because even though I was in school, I had a full-time job. I worked at a call center. I have stories for days on that one. But
but that was in Maryland, right? You felt more welcome there because there's more culture there.
Yes, because
and
there's
then
more culture.
You came to the
and
Ozarks.
Then I came to Springfield for school. I switched majors when I decided no more med school. So I came to Springfield. And I mean, 11 years ago when I came to Springfield, it was very different. It was not as diverse. I mean, it still isn't. It still isn't like diverse in that sense. But it was so much worse when I first came. You know, I was often like the only person of color in my class. You know, so it was just, that's when I really felt like I was forced to learn how to interact with, you know, because in Maryland, you had the opportunity to engage with whether it was, you know, white Americans or African Americans, and you know, you had it all, and people from other countries. And then there was a large Nigerian community there as well. Even at my job, you know, my supervisor was a Nigerian, you know, so which was funny too, because I could never call him by his name, and I would always call him uncle. Because that's our culture, is if someone's older, you can't call them by their name. So even though we were at work, because he was Nigerian and he was from my tribe, I had to call him uncle.
Ah,
you know, but that's a whole different story. But when I came to Springfield, it was the first time that I really had to focus on one group of, you know, people, because I mean, we're talking a town that has about 80+% white Americans. I had never worked with that, you know, graduating from college and entering into the workforce. You know, I took a job at the hospital. Like, I had 33 employees and 28 of them were American white. So it went bad. You know, I didn't do well with it because culturally, I didn't know how to handle that.
Have you experienced any type of maybe rude comments because of your ethnicity and because of your race?
I mean, even in Maryland, I did.
You did? So people did approach you
even
and
with the
like...
diversity, you know, when I worked at the call center in Maryland, one time I had a customer who called in, and as soon as I answered the call, and back then I worked for Comcast. Are you familiar with Comcast?
No.
They're like a cable internet company.
Oh, okay.
So I take the call. Thank you for calling Comcast. My first name is Rachel. My name is Rachel. How can I, you know, I had this fancy like response whenever I answer the call. Anyway, I took the call, excited to help this woman. And she says, can you get me someone who speaks English?
Why?
And I said, oh, just wait. And I said, well, if you're looking for someone who speaks English, you're going to have to hang up and call back, and your call will go to somebody else. But I don't have a way on my system to transfer you. She goes, you mean I have to hang up and call back? I said, well, clearly, whatever I just said, you heard it.
Yeah, so I do speak English.
You want to work with me, or you want to hang up and, you know, go and call back and talk to somebody who speaks the English that you want to hear. You know, so I gave her the attitude right back, and she didn't have a choice. She worked with me, and then by the end of the call, she apologized. But, you know, that was one instance. And then but that was, you know, a situation that I could tell was intentional, where when I came to Springfield, and I mentioned, you know, being in that job with 33 employees, 28 of them were American white. We had issues, and there was a lot of friction. I mean, literally by my third month, they had a page full of complaints to human resources against me, you know. But that was because there was a lot of miscommunication happening, you know, because our cultures are not the same. The way that I interact with people wasn't necessarily conducive. It wasn't like the diplomatic approach that Springfield was used to. So I'm a straightforward communicator. Like, I'll tell you like it is. I'll tell you kindly, but I'll tell you like it is. I also do a lot of hand motion, hand gesture, you know, so to some people that's like very much in your face type of strategy. So even though the temptation was to say, oh, they're discriminating against me, that's not what it was. Even they didn't know how to communicate with me. So it was like we were all struggling because we didn't, you know, they had never worked with an African. I had never worked with a white American person. And now I'm expected to lead them. So I think it's important to be able to like tell the difference when someone is like intentionally being rude versus when somebody is just clueless and they're just working with what they have.
You have a very smart approach towards situations like that and very wise approach. You don't hold grudges towards people. It doesn't sound like you just have a very straightforward, you know, approach to. We live in times right now where, you know, this might be controversial and you might not want to answer this question, but, you know, Black Lives Matter, things like that. A lot of, you know, people are saying that there is a lot of racism in America. How do you feel about that as an immigrant? You know, in America, and now you're an American citizen, but you still are first generation here in America from Nigeria. How do you feel about like all of this concept and people like white people saying that there is so much racism towards Black people?
So let me start off by saying that in terms of the, you know, the Black versus the white versus Black, I don't know that I have enough of a background to speak on it because the African experience is very much different from so what I'm trying to say is when you're raised in Africa and that's, you know, all you've known, you're very much limited in knowledge or experience. You don't have that real experience of the African American person who was born here, whose, you know, ancestors and, you know, family prior generations were slaves. They have a lot more, you know, concrete foundation and backing for whatever, you know, however they're dealing with the, you know, the traumatic reactions and all of that, right? I don't know that I have enough to be able to say, oh, this is how I feel about it. But here's what I say. It's always, I feel like everything in life is about like really being intentional about hearing each other out. And we are faced with times where people have the opportunity to be the bridge rather than the, you know, here's, you know, I mean, if somebody has a traumatic history regarding something and I haven't passed through their experience, I want to attempt to understand why is this the situation? How can I, you know, how can I be that person that helps them see that I see them and I honor them and I, you know, I respect them and I want them to be treated just like I would be treated. So I think it's really more of like, where's our sense of consideration for other human beings? Much more than it's the validity of anything, because what's valid to each party or to each person is very much subjective to them, right? But the moment we can come to that place of humanity and consideration for one another, we can start to have more open conversations that is, you know, really intentional about hearing people, not so much, you know, the whole me against them or us against them, because that's not producing anything good.
And that's kind of what I expected you to say too, because we're both, first generation immigrants still. This is our first time living here in America. So I feel like both of us, in a way, well, no matter like how many years we will live in America, we will still be treated a little different than actual American person. No matter like of our skin color, it's just because we're from a different country.
Yeah.
I'm a white person. If I don't open my mouth, you would never guess I'm from Russia. But I'm still like, as soon as I start speaking, people are like, oh, where are you from? And I say Russia. And they're like, what do you think about the war in Ukraine?
Oh my God.
And that's just every time. Before that, it was, oh, you probably never get cold in the winter, right? You're from Russia. Or you drink vodka all the time. So it's like things like that all of the time. So no matter like the skin color, we're immigrants. So we will be treated different no matter what we do. No matter how many years we live here, honestly.
I think for us, though, I think we get... Oftentimes, it's assumed that I get it, that I I have a well-rounded knowledge of the history. I'm still learning the history. I have not even begun to scratch the surface, And last week, while in New York, I had the opportunity to go on a tour, and we were seeing... I was learning so much about the African American history and a lot of the oppression that had happened, and that's when you are faced with the realities of what the African American community has gone through. It is impossible to just walk away from it thinking that they have no reason to feel the way that they feel, and for me, like I said, it was a learning opportunity. And there were even instances where I was pretty upset on behalf of them because I was like, no, that's not okay. And everybody else who was on that tour felt the same, and I didn't have to be African American to feel those emotions. Yeah. So what I'm saying is when we can really be intentional about, listening and letting ourselves into other people's experiences, that's where the shift happens.
And you've been here for 20 years. Almost. That's almost 20 years. Yeah. That's a long time to get to know America. So share a little bit about your life now. How have you established here in the U.S.?
Oh, so...
You said you have a kid. You have a son.
I have an almost 7-year-old. Keeps me really busy. Thinks he's my boss. He's recently started telling me, can you go for a week straight and just give me yeses and don't give me any no's?
That's like a YouTube challenge video.
Oh, it is? Okay. I'm like... That's
where it's all coming from.
What a negotiator. I'm like, sorry, life doesn't work that way. No. You can't get a yes all week. No. Yep. So now he's starting to ask for yeses all week. And, can we just have a full week of you saying yes?
No, impossible.
No, sorry.
No. And you also work for a nonprofit organization, too.
I did. So the last, since 2014, I've worked in a nonprofit space. Now I do it more just as a volunteer and serving on the board. But it's not my paid job anymore. But it was my paid job for about 9+ years. And then early last year, I made the decision to focus completely on my business, which is not nonprofit. So, yeah.
Do you have an American dream to work towards too right now?
An American dream? What is an American dream?
What is an American dream? Yes. Do you believe in it?
I don't. An American dream, in my opinion, or from what I know, is really being able to reach that point of, comfort. You've got all that you want out of life. You've got your house, you've got your car, etc. And I could be wrong, but that's what I thought.
Materialistic.
I've thought of the American dream to be. However, I think for the average immigrant, especially for me and others like me who are from places like Nigeria, where literally everything is riding on your success in America, not for your own. The average immigrant, the average Nigerian comes to America not just to make a life for themselves and their family. They come to America to literally lay the path for others to benefit. You know, in other words, there are people who have sacrificed in order for most Nigerian immigrants to come to the U.S. for a better life. And they make that sacrifice because they know if that door opens, that person literally, because when you start to look at the currency difference, right? Right now, $1 is about 1,700 Nigerian naira. Right?
So you'll be rich if you go back to Nigeria.
Yeah. So like, you know, about $80, 100 bucks here is almost 200,000 naira in Nigeria. And that's big money. You know, at any given point in time, the average Nigerian who lives in America has about 5-10 requests from back home, like monetary requests. They're taking care of other people back home. We lost my dad last year. Before he passed, he personally was financially responsible for, you know, about 10-20 other people that he like provided for, that were not us, that were not his family, every month, you know. And when he passed, I inherited some of those. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So when you're talking about the American dream, I'm like, what is the American dream? Because from where I'm looking, if I accept a job, if I'm doing business, I'm looking at things through the lens of, can I afford my basic needs and still be able to support the people back home? That's the average Nigerian that is living in America. You know, at any given point, you're getting a message. I got a message last week while I was in New York. A friend of mine and her family are getting ready to be thrown out of their home because they couldn't afford, you know, to pay the rent. So guess what? We're scribbling. We're like, how do we prevent this from happening? That's the community I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know a single American that would do something like that.
You know,
to just like send money to a person that they're not even related to.
Yeah. And like when we lost my grandma in 2018, each family member, you know, was responsible to pull funds together. When we lost my dad last year, I'm the only child that lives in America. So guess what? I'm the child that was responsible to bury him. Like it's financially. Expensive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So really, what is the American dream for someone like me? Because before I even think about dreaming, I'm thinking, have I taken care of my people?
Wow. I have never heard anybody say something like that before, Dami. I'm very fascinated with our conversation so far. And before we step into a break, I wanted to ask you about since you mentioned you have a son, going back to that again, how is that cultural difference evolves in your household? Do you still celebrate the same holidays? Do you cook the same Nigerian food that you used to at home for him?
All Nigerian food.
Do you teach him a little bit about your culture?
Yes.
Like, you know, things like that?
Yeah.
Is your husband, or maybe you don't...
No,
sorry. I know I sound so creepy every time I ask that.
His dad and I were married. Well, we're not anymore. We haven't been married. Well, he was about to be 1 when the marriage ended.
So his biological father,
yes.
Is he American?
He's Nigerian.
He's also Nigerian.
Yes.
Okay, so that was my curiosity, because multicultural families exist. You know, my mother is married to an American man, and so he has a different approach to, you know, me and how he, I guess, raised me. I was 16. And she has a completely, you know, different. Russian woman. She has a completely different approach to, you know, kids and things like that. Yes. So that was my question. How do you provide, you know, the cultural curiosity for your kid?
So he's actually really, he's in a unique spot because my mom also lives with me. When his dad and when the marriage ended, my mom moved here. And in our culture, grandma takes care of grandbaby.
Oh,
So
that's
automatically, once I made the call to say, hey, unfortunately, this marriage is not working, my mom knew she had to move. So she's lived here ever since. With me, helping with my son, and that allows me to work, to, run my business. So he's getting, my version of our culture, and he's getting my mother's version of our culture, which my mom's is a lot more like tradition,
of
like,
course,
old-fashioned. Yes. So,
but that's inside of the house.
Yeah.
But then outside, he goes to high school, or he goes to probably elementary school.
Yeah, he's in first grade.
Yes. He goes and talks to, little American children, and they are like, telling him, hey, do you play this little video game? Or, hey, do you want to dress up as a skeleton for Halloween? Things like that. Like, how do you maintain all of that?
So he's recently started, Halloween just passed, and he basically said, I want to go live in an American house. And I said, why? He said, because I want to celebrate Halloween. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. And so we kind of got a kick out of it, but also, he's starting to really see where the differences are for us. And the other part of that is food. He's also asked if he could live with Americans because our foods are very spicy. And, we tell him, we're like, you're a Nigerian child. You have to eat spicy food. And he goes, no, it's too spicy. And we're like, well, that's the food, because we're not going to make the food less spicy because you're raised in America, you want
to keep your authentic culture.
Yes. And we know that the spice is not going to kill him.
So he's just being dramatic.
So we're like, just try it, try it. And so sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but we put it in front of him and we say, hey, we're all going to eat the same thing. And then sometimes if he's really like, you can tell when he's like really adamant about something, and then we're like, okay, we'll get you what you want. He really likes mac and cheese, and that's like not a Nigerian food.
Yes.
So I'll make that. And my mom's like, oh, and she'll like, gripe all day about me making him mac and cheese because he asked for it. And I'm like, well, so there are things like that. But he's starting to see where the clear difference is. He can tell like what he gets to have at school and what is absolutely unavailable at our house because we just don't have it.
And eventually your kid, will grow up and he will make his own decision to, I want mac and cheese and burgers all the time and I don't want to eat Nigerian food ever again. So how would you feel about that? Like if
your
okay.
Son... I mean, that will be his choice at that point, but he would have gotten the exposure to the Nigerian food. And there are certain things that he likes out of Nigerian food. Like there are, specific, delicacies that he's like, oh, I like that. That's actually really good. And he wants to have it. And then there are others that he doesn't like. So he'll get to pick and choose. I mean, there are some Nigerian foods that I'm not crazy about either. And you couldn't pay me to eat them. So he'll have that, that's part of adulting.
You're giving him the freedom.
That's part of adulting.
Yes.
Growing.
Absolutely. And finally, Dami, what has been your proudest moment in your journey so far?
Oh, I would say non-work related. Or does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. I would honestly, if I were to say what my proudest moment has been about the transition and like, having come from Nigeria as a young person, it's being able to step into that position of responsibility for myself as a young person, because when I lived in Nigeria, I feel like, again, because it was such community, there was a lot of accountability. I had people who looked out for me. I had people who, called me out if I was walking the wrong path. In America, people kind of just look the other way, and when you come here as a young person, and that's why even back home, a lot of, the talk is people get to America as a young person and they'll lose,
their authentic self.
Yeah, they'll lose themselves and move. And that's even truer when it's a young person, just turning 20, coming to the U.S. And all of a sudden you're like, my gosh, I have to hold myself accountable. There's no spiritual father, mother, there's no parent, there's no older brother, older sister anywhere to put me on the right path. I have to learn, how do I put myself on the right path? And that is, definitely, if I were to say something that I'm proud of, it's, as a young person, being able to like recognize the need for myself and like sticking through it and saying, you know what, here's the values I was raised with. Here are the beliefs and all of those. And I'm like sticking to it no matter what the environment is presenting to me.
Welcome back to the American Dream Podcast. I'm here with Dami from Nigeria, and we're about to take a beautiful trip back home. How do you feel about that? Excited?
Excited.
When was the last time you were back home?
Last year.
Last year. Do you try to go every year?
I try. It doesn't always work out. I didn't get to this year, but I'm definitely going next year.
Yes, yeah. So, first question right away. What makes Nigeria a unique destination for travelers compared to other countries in West Africa?
Okay, so first off, in West Africa, I've really only been to other West African countries, and it was very short term. So I can't really say from like a lot of experience, but I would say that for Nigeria, it is really just a variety of culture. So in Africa in general, Nigeria has the highest number of tribes and the highest number of languages. And so I would say that just from a cultural variety standpoint, there's a lot of like art and culture, and there's just a lot of beauty to behold because of how rich it is in cultural diversity.
How long is the travel process? Let's start from that. Like, let's say we're flying to Nigeria right now. Where to start? Where do you have to go first?
There are 3 Nigerian embassies in the U.S. One is in New York, one's in Washington, D.C., and then one is in Atlanta, Georgia. So those are the 3 Nigerian embassies in all of America. You will have to go to one of those to get your visa.
Okay. Yeah. So get a visa first.
Get a visa because you will not be able to travel without it.
Yes, absolutely.
And the process can get a little cumbersome. It is definitely not as streamlined as the American visa process, or any other type of American like immigration process. I feel like the Nigerian embassies are still quite figuring out, how to.
Nigeria is not like a touristic destination, I don't think, right? Like,
well, some of it.
Some of it is, but it's not like Thailand that everyone knows and goes to,
No. There's a lot of, I would say that if you're really just curious about learning about cultures, arts, there's a lot of that in Nigeria. There is wildlife. Very much, but you can tell a lot of the wildlife in Nigeria is mostly experienced by tourists, not necessarily the people who live there. so there's that to look at. I'm looking at my notes to make sure. And then, a big one is a lot of the tribal events.
That's interesting.
So, I mean, Nigerian events are a whole experience.
Yes, we definitely will talk about this here in a little bit. But right now I want to know, how long is the flight? How many hours is it?
It depends on the airline. It depends on the layover country. So Delta by far has the shortest trip. Well, I said Delta, but there's also, I think, KLM out of New York that are pretty straightforward. And you don't really have any layover in any country. So Delta goes, there's a straight flight from Atlanta to Lagos or to Abuja even, I think, from through Delta. And that flight is give or take about 12 hours.
12 hours.
Yes.
See, I hate flying in planes, and flying to Russia is a headache too. That's why I don't go there as often. It's like 10 hours in a plane.
Yeah.
Plus layovers, plus other planes.
Yeah.
So I don't go there as often. So applaud to you for going there every
12
year.
hours is very much, that's the shortest.
Oh my gosh.
Because if you take airlines like Qatar Airways, Emirates, British Airways, Ethiopian Airlines, you have to stop in those countries. Emirates will take you through Dubai. I've flown Emirates and spent 12 hours in Dubai, but it was good because they put me in a hotel and I got to see the city. So depending on where you're going, if you go to Doha is very beautiful. They'll put you in a hotel. You can kind of explore while you're laying over. You can, have the opportunity to see a different country on the way. So I think it depends on how much a person wants to explore. If you want to just go straight to Nigeria and no stress, don't want to stop anywhere, then Delta, or if you're flying out of New York, you can do KLM, and I think there's Arik Air. There's like a number of airlines out of New York that are like straight. So you will have to intentionally find those types of flights out of Atlanta or New York.
Delta, sponsor this episode, please. So if a tourist straight just wants to go to Nigeria and see that country, where should they land? Or is it Lagos, no matter how you plan your trip?
Yeah, I would say Lagos. Lagos will be the arrival entry. So
would you recommend a tourist to stay there and explore Lagos as the representation of the country, or would you recommend them to go somewhere else?
If you want to have a well-rounded experience, I would say really tour the country. So don't just stay in Lagos. Go to all the different regions and go to Port Harcourt, go to Abuja, go to Abeokuta. There are many different just go through all the different, and I actually just before this I was looking at the top 10 recommended places, and a lot of them are some of them are in Lagos, some of them are not in Lagos. So I would say just look up the top tourist attractions and explore those places, because a lot of them are very educational and they'll give you I guess it depends on how nerdy you want to get about it, but if you're really looking for the experience, I would say to explore. And then I will the food is a big part of that too.
Of course.
I would say get into the food, learn about the food.
Don't be scared that it's spicy.
Yeah, well, and not all tribes have spicy food. Not all tribes.
Okay.
The Yoruba tribe has where we have some of the spiciest foods, and remember, there's over there's about 371 tribes.
Yes.
So there are foods by other tribes that aren't spicy. So yeah, just explore. And if you want to, stay away from our spicy food, I get it. Stay away from it. But there are a lot of fantastic, meals just throughout the culture.
Absolutely. And before we talk about food and some dishes to try specifically, let's talk about transportation. Yesterday when I was watching the travel show,
Yeah.
They showed me how transportation works in Nigeria, in Lagos specifically. And it stressed me out because the traffic is huge. The tuk-tuks are there. Some cars are there, motorcycles and pedestrians. Everybody is walking on the same street. There's no asphalt. It's a little nerve-wracking to drive on that.
Yeah.
So would you recommend a tourist to rent a car, rent a driver, rent a taxi?
I had that on my notes.
Or tuk-tuk? Like how to explore it with transportation?
So the first thing I want to say is never, ever visit Nigeria unless you have a trusted local connection or host. So that's a big part of it for security reasons. So you want to make sure that you have a trusted host that's basically going to help guide you through your stay and protect you, because they are very much more aware than you will ever be. And I say this, even being a missionary, that's something that, you know, I haven't talked much about. I do medical missions. I go to places like Cuba, Honduras. Never ever go without local hosts. So same thing applies for Nigeria, because security is a big thing.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you want to make sure that that's sorted. And then kind of coming back to the transportation, my recommendation, even I do this, I learned to drive in Nigeria. You will never catch me driving in Nigeria. I always get a driver. Again, trusted driver.
Yes.
I always get someone that has worked with somebody I know for, you know, at least 10 years, that they can vet. They give me, you know, good recommendation. And oftentimes I stick with the same person for years, you know, at a time. Every time I go, it's the same person. And then I switch if needed, if something's changed. But you will need a driver, because you need somebody who knows what they're doing, who can drive at the level of craziness that Nigerian drivers drive with. So you will need that for sure. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, so I wouldn't even bother with the tuk-tuk and all, you know, all the buses, like, no, you will be stressed if you do that. Just get a driver. If you have to pay for them to, you know, rent a vehicle, most of them will already have a vehicle of their own. So you're just paying them. Usually my driver, I pay roughly about 25,000 a day. Which
and that's the currency.
Is, in Nigerian naira.
Which is like $2, isn't it?
Well, $1 is 1,700.
Oh, 1,700, not 17,000.
Yeah. $1 is 1,700. So I pay them. So we're talking $15 a day.
A day?
Yeah.
That's a steal of a deal.
$15 a day approximately can get you. So if you're there for a week, you're, you know, looking at about what, 100 and 10, 115 or so.
So don't look at this. I'm not going to support you on this one. I'm sorry. No, I was like scared when you were like, well, is it 100? I'm like, don't ask me.
That is too funny. But yeah, you want to, that's, you know, some of the things to think about. And then the other thing you want to think about is, make sure to verify that you're staying at a hotel that has consistent power.
Oh.
Because Nigeria is one of the countries where literally they can go for days with no power.
What?
And so a lot of people live on generators. So depending on the kind of hotel you're staying at, you may have power, you may not.
Interesting.
And you want to have power because we don't ever not have power in the U.S. So, do that. Have your local host make sure to confirm that they have you in a hotel that has all the amenities and has, you know, power. And it's also safe and quiet and, you know.
Speaking of safety, I was going to ask you next question. How safe is Nigeria?
Depends on what part you go to.
Lagos, let's say. Let's say you go
even
to...
in Lagos, there's like
Some parts.
Yeah.
It's a big city, of course.
It's a big city. I would say if you go to Lagos, you will find great options if you go, stay at a hotel on the island. And then if you stay on the mainland, I will say look at places like Ikeja, Lagos. They tend to have a lot of really good. I actually stayed there last year, and it was on the mainland, but it was pretty decent. The hotel had a great restaurant. I got served all my meals in my room. I would get called the night before. They will call me and the breakfast was included, and they would call me every night and be like, what would you like in the morning for breakfast? And they would bring it to my room.
That's nice.
So it was really cool. And I chose that even though my family has a house in Lagos. I didn't stay there, but part of that for me was I wanted to have my privacy. And if I stayed at our house, I would have a lot of unannounced visitors.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to be able to control that. So,
is that true that there is lots of kidnapping happening in Nigeria?
Oh, yeah.
Lots of kidnapping. That's and like human trafficking somebody. And, drugs. Yeah,
there is a lot of kidnapping. I will say much more than drugs. So it's important to... And if they recognize that you're there on your own, then that's even more, they can target, you can be targeted. So, but if they see that someone who is, a citizen and they're local and they're with you, you wouldn't be messed with, because you want to go out with confidence and that feeling of safety. So, and then that's the other thing. You don't just go out on your own to just explore. You always want to go out with, whether it's your driver. And that's the other thing is whoever your driver is, they're also kind of like bodyguarding you.
Yes.
When you're going places.
Absolutely. So yesterday, once again, when I was watching that travel show, they experienced something very scary. So this lady that was the host, she was walking down the street. She's like, maybe like my complexion of a human being. She's a young woman. Yeah. She's just walking there. And a lot of people were like, don't film me. But I mean, that's probably a cultural difference. Yeah. Maybe some are actually uncomfortable being filmed. But what happened was she was just standing there, I think, choosing something on the market. And she got attacked by 3 locals. Oh. And they were trying to... pretend like they were about to like kidnap her or something. And she's got the cameraman, so like he immediately like drops the camera and like starts running, but it still records like the sounds and everything. And so he comes up to her, and then there's this other local that comes in, and he's very like buff, very like muscular, like a Superman, and he like saves her. And then she was like, oh my God, why did you do that? And he was like, oh, my name is Chocho and I'm the bodyguard here locally. And she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, what do I need to, like, do I need to pay you? He was like, yeah, I take $40 a day. And then later, that turns out to be a scam. So that was a setup. That was his friends that attack, young tourist, like ladies.
Yes.
They pretend like they're about to kidnap her, whatever. And obviously she didn't know about this.
Oh my gosh.
And so he saves her and then takes the $40. Oh, he didn't take advantage of her. He just took the $40, and she probably would have been fine without him. Yeah, but it was just an interesting like a scam story to actually also maybe be aware of.
Yeah. I mean, and that's again, that just goes to stress.
Yeah.
Even more the point of see if you know anybody who is Nigerian who can connect you with somebody who would, and there are people like even at the airport, because the airport in Lagos is very stressful too. And there are people who work the airport that like actually have the ability to make the process easier for you. So oftentimes, even when my mom goes back, because she's a lot older, my mom is 76, so when she's traveling, I'm like, I don't want her stressed. And I have a guy at the airport that I would text and be like, hey, she's coming in, please, help her out. And when she's flying back, help her in. And, help with the bags. And, you always want to work with somebody that that
Absolutely.
you can, you've had enough experience with that you can predict their behavior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about food now.
Yes.
Food in Lagos or food in Nigeria? What dishes to try?
Well, so the main kind of universal Nigerian dish that I always highlight is jollof rice. And you may have found it when you were doing your research, but this is what it looks like, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll show you guys. So that's what it looks like. I don't know how much of that you can see, but it's basically tomato rice.
Tomato rice.
Really spicy.
Okay.
And so there's a joke amongst Nigerians that if you have a non-Nigerian friend who ever dares to not say something good about jollof rice, they're like, it's not even worth that type of negativity. Cut them off. Don't be friends with them if they don't like jollof rice.
What?
I mean, it's a joke, but that's how personal Nigerians take jollof rice.
Wow.
In fact, there is a battle between Nigeria and Ghana about who makes the better jollof rice. And there has been a question for many, many decades about what the origin of jollof rice is. A lot of Nigerians try to claim the origin of it, but it really, I think, originated from Senegal. It just so happens the Nigerians are they've kind of hijacked it and made it their own. So if you ever find yourself around Nigerians and Ghanaians, a quick way to make a Nigerian enemy would be to praise a Ghanaian jollof rice over a Nigerian jollof rice.
Oh my God. Wow. I was not expecting that the food topic is going to be so serious.
No, Nigerians are very serious about jollof rice. We don't play with it, and that's, if I ever introduce Nigerian food to anybody, chances that that's the first meal food that you're going to taste.
Yes. And is that true? When I was doing the research, I saw the market in Lagos, the big market, that 4 million people go through it a day.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
And the market is so huge.
So, fun fact, when I was a child and when I would go to that market with the market with my mom, within about 10, 15 minutes, I would get really dizzy because of how crowded it was.
Yes, absolutely.
So I always got sick. I've always had crowd problems.
Yeah.
So I still don't like shopping. Instacart was created for people like me. So I've always had that problem. And even as a child, I did. And it's just, the Nigerian market is not for the faint of hearts.
No, but maybe for a cultural shock. Yeah. For people who want to experience, something.
All the excitement.
Yes.
Obviously, by all means, go and explore.
Absolutely. And I also saw that they sell very different dead animals there. And when I saw
dead animals,
when I saw that, I got very sad because she came to that
I laugh because the Nigerian person's perspective of animals is definitely not.
Very different. Yes. And so this lady bought the turtle there that was sold, and the turtle was tied in the thing. The turtle was still alive, but it was about to be eaten or something. And so she took it and let it out, and people were like, no, don't do that. And she let it out in the ocean.
Oh.
She just let it go because she didn't want somebody to eat it. So once again, the cultural difference. If you're going to go to that market, be prepared to see something like that.
Those types of things.
Yes.
Even things like snails. We eat snails.
Snails, yes.
I don't know which other culture eats snails, but yeah, Nigerians love snails.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's depending on how it's cooked. I would eat it, but there's only 2 people that cook it that I really like. Anyway,
big cultural shock on the market.
That is a big culture shock with food. We eat things like cow feet. We eat the intestine of cows. We eat things like tripe. We eat chicken feet. We eat chicken neck. Some people even eat chicken head.
So everything.
Literally everything is food. We don't eat dogs. I am happy to announce that.
Dogs?
Yeah.
Cats?
No,
No
we
cats?
don't. Actually, cats in Nigeria are mostly perceived to be evil. And that's because historically in Nigeria, witches and wizards have taken the form of cats to attack people.
Interesting.
So the way that the like my mother's generation of Nigerians, the way that they would view a cat is very, till today, if my mom sees a cat roaming, she's like immediately rebuking the cat and like praying against it.
Wow.
Because cats are perceived as evil. And then God bless that cat if it's like black or something, even more.
That's even worse. So you mentioned multiple times about the tribes and about the voodoo and about the magic or
just all the idols and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So share with me a little bit about Nigerian people and the magic part of it. I don't know what it's called. I don't know the terminology of it. Like
it's so in Nigeria we call it juju. Is what we call it. And then just in English terms, voodoo, witchcraft, all of those different things.
Yes.
And then as you kind of go back into the hometowns and the villages, there are certain places that they have their own gods as well. Just depending on their tribe, they have their own like gods. It's not like religious. Now, Nigeria as a whole has a combination of 53%, combination of like we have Christians, Muslims, and then other. And I assume that other would be like people who are into idol worshiping. But we have but then you've also got some people who are either Christian or Muslim, but they also have a lot of idol beliefs, depending on, their tribe and the gods of their tribe and those types of things. So Nigeria is made up of 53% Muslim and 46% Christian, and then 1% is kind of just different things. And so with that said, growing up, we had exposure to both the Islam and the Christian religion. Even my boarding school, going through middle school, high school, our principal was Muslim. Every Friday we prayed like the Muslims pray. Mondays through Thursdays, we prayed like Christians do. Sundays, we got to go to chapel. But then sometimes on Fridays, we had friends who would go to the mosque and we'll go with them. So we really had there was a lot of integration is what that did for us. I am a Christian, but I also, had a lot of friends that were not Christians. And so I had the opportunity of like kind of, supporting them and like going and seeing, how they worship. And then they would come to chapel on Sundays. There was, as kids, there was that freedom to like just explore with your friends.
So America says that America has the freedom of religion, but turns out Nigeria got it too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the other part of that is there's a lot of recognition for both religions. Like we have Islamic holidays just as much as we have Christian holidays in Nigeria that's practiced. And then kind of going back to your question on the, witchcraft. And all of that. I think that now, I mean, of course, I haven't lived in Nigeria for almost 2 decades, but I imagine that now with a lot more exposure to Western culture, that's like decreasing even more and more. But like that stuff still exists. It still exists. It's real.
So the question I was dying to ask you this entire time, do you know some of the witchcraft? Do you know how to do the...
Oh, do I know how to?
Yeah.
No.
No? You've never learned how to?
No, because I was raised Christian.
Yes.
So I never had exposure to the witchcraft side of things.
Okay.
We had some extended family that like we all knew were like into witchcraft and practiced voodoo. In fact, my dad's older brother, he really was like, he was like next to the king of like their hometown. and he practiced a lot of voodoo, so much that when they got in a war with a neighboring town, a lot of Nigerians know about this war. It was between, so my dad was from a place called Modakeke, Osun State. And then they had this it was ongoing war with Ife, Osun State. And my dad's brother was very much, he was very influential in their hometown. And so every time they attempted to kill him, because he had voodoo, he had powers, all he needed to do was to make sure his body touched the surface and he would disappear. So they could never quite capture him and kill him. And eventually they did, and they made sure his body couldn't touch anything. And they literally, and this is kind of graphic, they literally, chopped off his head and threw his body in the well. And that's how he ended up being killed. It was all over the news. But before that happened, I mean, it was nearly impossible for them to get him because of his powers.
That's crazy, because usually when I hear voodoo, I think of the dolls. Like the dolls and needles. No. I feel like a lot of people would think the same way because that's what we see in movies, and that's the stereotype. No, but it's not real, that. It's not
real stuff.
So he was able to possess things, or he was able to cure people and disappear.
All of the above.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And even there were certain family members on my dad's side that I would never even hang around because I knew that they had voodoo. And I had one of my dad's older sisters. This was probably around 2004. I was at a family wedding. One of my cousins was getting married. And one of my dad's sisters came and she touched me, and I was, younger, so I wasn't as aware. At that point, I'm just oh yeah, smile at everybody, say hello to everybody. And so she touched me, and literally for several years after that, I would have terrible dreams. And in my dreams, she was really aggressively trying to kill me.
Because she was a witch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What?
So, and then I really started to have I started to get sick a lot. And eventually, my mom had asked me about it because I guess, she had gone and prayed at church and a prophet was had mentioned somebody touched me. So she asked me about it. And I remembered when that happened. So I told her, and she was so mad. That happened. And so there was a lot of praying that went into that.
That's crazy. But you're against the witchcraft. Yeah. You don't do this.
I am fully against it. 1,000%.
Do you watch Harry Potter?
No.
No? Mm-mm. You don't like Harry Potter either?
Mm-mm.
It's a movie.
I like horror movies, but there are certain things that will draw me back to some of those realities. And so I'm just no, not interested.
I'll pass on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so enough of the witchcraft. I have goosebumps over here.
So I'm it's real, guys.
Yeah.
America, there's equal opportunities everywhere. So people don't really need, evil powers to make it in life.
Absolutely. Gosh. Okay, let's talk about language barrier now in Nigeria. If a tourist from America goes to Nigeria, you said people in Nigeria speak English, right?
Yes.
But how are Nigerian people? Are they willing to help you? Let's say you didn't make any connections earlier. You just go there. Are you able to make any friends, or are Nigerian people more distant?
No, they're friendly. They'll help you. I think it's just the challenge is just who can you trust?
Absolutely.
To help you. So you will find people who want to help you. It's just it'll just be a question of can you trust them, and to what degree
Absolutely.
Are you trusting them?
And the language too. If somebody wants to know right now few words in a language that you know from your tribe, like you said, there's 500 different languages. Can you teach me how to say hello or how are you?
Yes. So in Yoruba, for instance, which is one of the top, so in Nigeria, even though there are 500 plus languages. The top 3 languages are Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa. Those are the top 3. And in Yoruba, if you want to say, how are you, it's bawoni.
Bawoni.
Yes. Which it's very tricky because in English, how are you simply means how are you. In Nigeria, if you were speaking to an older person and you said bawoni, it will be disrespectful to them.
Why?
Because in Nigerian, Yoruba vowels are kind of weird. So our consonants and our vowels are very much, so in other words, there are specific vowels that are tailored to people who are older than you, and there are vowels that are meant for people your age or younger.
We actually have similar concept in Russian language too.
Okay. So because of that, like I wouldn't say bawoni to my mom. You know, I would say, you know, oftentimes if I call her while I'm at work to check in, I'll say bawoni day.
Bawoni dingy?
Day, which means it's kind of Yoruba combined with English. So how was your day? I would say, how was your day? Just so that it sounds more
respectful.
Yeah. And the yi is very much like used for, that's the respect piece there that allows me to not sound disrespectful.
Absolutely.
Basically.
And the hello is...
We don't really have... Do we have a word for hello? I don't think we do.
Or hi? No?
We don't really have a word for hello, hi.
Interesting.
Yeah, we don't really have a word for hello, hi. Now, if you said good morning is also their variations. If I was saying good morning to somebody my age, I would say... or younger, I would say Karo.
Kara?
Yeah, Karo.
Karo.
Yeah. So Kaaro. But we've got like the intonations that like kind of tell you what to say. And then if I was speaking to somebody who was older, I would say Ekaro.
Ekaro. Ekaro. Kind of sounds like my name. My name is Ekaterina. Ekaro. And by the way, a lot of people also wonder, like, are names translatable in Nigeria?
Totally.
Like, my name is Katie in America, and my Russian name is Katya. My full name is Ekaterina. How would that sound in Nigeria?
No, see, like in Nigeria, it's more tribal.
Yeah.
It's all tribal. So, like, my first name is actually Rachel, which nobody ever calls me Rachel.
Okay.
Dami is the middle of my middle name, which my middle name is Oluwa Damilola, and it means God has blessed me with wealth. So
it's a nice name to have.
And that's in the Yoruba tribe. And my Igbo name is Adanna, which is basically the first daughter of her father. In my case, I'm the first and only daughter of my father, so I got Adanna. And then, we have other Igbo names that are like Chinonso, one of my closest friends here in Springfield. Her name's Chinonso. It means God is near to me. Wow. So you hear like
meaningful
those, a lot of times,
meaningful.
And that's why us Nigerians, you can tell which tribe we're from by our names. Funny story, last week while I was in New York, I had met a fellow Nigerian, and we start talking about our names, and she goes, "Oh, my name is Victoria Polk." And I look at her and I'm like, "Where did you get Polk from?" Because she's Nigerian. And then she goes, "Oh, Bayelsa State." I'm like, "Oh yeah, Bayelsa State. Y'all have those weird names." And that's like one of the states in Nigeria and tribes in Nigeria that tend to have like the very, like, we're not sure where the name originated from, but most tribes in Nigeria, like, I would hear names and I can immediately tell, oh, this person is from Cross River States. This person is from, they're Hausa, or this
crazy.
You can tell.
I feel like I can talk to you for hours, but unfortunately my voice is starting to disappear, so I apologize to you guys for listening to this right now. Lastly, before we step into a break, what are some of the items that everyone should bring with them from Nigeria after their travel is over? Like physical items, souvenirs.
Okay. So souvenirs from Nigeria. I feel like a lot of it for us that we come back with, honestly, is usually like food stuff.
Food stuff, of course.
Yeah, it's always stuff that you can easily, because it's so hard to find our food items here. So we tend to bring things, and now they've started to, make things in a way that it's, easy for you to travel with. So like a big delicacy in Nigeria is pounded yam. So it's like real yams that have been pounded, eaten with egusi soup. Egusi soup is like melon seeds. And now they've started to make them in a way that it's like grinded into powder so that you can transport them easily. And I could send you some pictures, for that.
Of course.
And then, same thing with the melon seeds. You can grind them into powder. Another Nigerian meal that's very much universal to Nigeria is bean cake. We call it akara. Well, sometimes it's akara, sometimes it's moi moi, just depending on if it's baked or fried. And that's made with beans. So you basically peel the beans, you blend it, and then you can make your bean cake with it. But now they've started to make it in like little like dry forms that you don't have to go through the work, and it's easy to like travel with without customs giving you a hard time.
Wow. So bring food from Nigeria. Welcome back to the American Dream Podcast. I'm here with Dami from Nigeria, and I am fascinated, a little fangirling right now too, because I just saw some cool, authentic Nigerian items on the table. So guide me through all of this.
Yes. So these are very specific to, a lot of different Nigerian tribes, but this in particular specific to the Yoruba culture. They're a version of our coral beads. If you've ever seen any like Nigerian weddings or like any tribal event, basically, what's very consistent is our clothing, our outfits. You dress, and I'll talk about this fabric. There's a certain way that you have to dress.
It's like a uniform.
To a Nigerian wedding. And so the coral beads, and I made sure to bring you accurate information. They represent a symbol of royalty. Is what they represent. Some of it is, spiritual significance. They have, in the Yoruba traditions, the coral beads are considered to have some spiritual power. They're used as like offerings to deities and ancestors during rituals.
So this is a necklace.
Yes.
Necklace and earrings.
So this will go like over and and then they have also, they're treated as like protective amulets. And so they're believed to protect, against negative energies. Just depending on what's, where it originated from, who made them.
Does this specific one have any meaning to it?
No, this is just aesthetic.
Okay.
So that's the last part of it is sometimes it's just aesthetic, to kind of look the part of a culture. And so that's what that is. Did
you bring it with you from Nigeria from your last trip, or did you order it online?
No, my mom brought this a few years ago. She brings me a lot of things because she goes a lot more often than I do. So,
is this expensive to buy in Nigeria if a tourist wants to?
No, it wouldn't be expensive for somebody from the U.S. because remember the currency value, or difference. So they'll probably be like, this is cheap. Where for a Nigerian who knows the Nigerian currency, it's pretty expensive.
How much is it for dollars?
You may get this for, I would say maybe $50, maybe
50.
Yeah. Probably about $50.
It's very
and depending
pretty.
on the length of it as well. This is more of like a shorter one. There are a lot of others that are more like, elaborate, and they're longer. They're pretty.
This is so pretty. I love coral. This is one of my like favorite colors.
Oh.
That's why I'm like, oh my God, that looks so cool. I probably would buy that if I went to Nigeria.
You went.
Yes.
Well, there are a lot of really, just fantastic designers that like I even still follow on Instagram, and sometimes I will custom order something. And even all of this, and I'll talk about the lace.
Yeah.
This is custom made. So this was the fabric that we picked when we lost my dad last year. So I had a longer dress made in the same fabric. And that's the one I wanted to bring at first, but it was pretty heavy. And then this is just what was left over from the fabric. And so I asked my designer to make me this really nice top.
It's like a jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the back of it, and that's the front.
So you like tie it in the back.
Like a turtleneck. Yeah. No, it's like a turtleneck. You tie it up at the. It's really tricky, but it looks really nice.
It does look very nice. I love everything sparkly.
Yes. And so that's the lace is also something that's a big indication of like prestige, and a lot of Yorubas, even the Igbos will wear a lot of, laces. Just our laces are different. You can tell, if it's a Yoruba outfit versus if it's an Igbo outfit. And then we've got the gele. The gele is, we love our geles for sure.
So it's like a hat.
Yeah, so it's like a hat. And this was like it was like a roll, and I tied it. I had styled this a few weeks ago and did not.
You should put it on, Dami.
It looks so pretty because I've also got the.
Oh, you have your hair done.
Yeah. So it'll be hard. But this goes on the head. And they have their significance as well. So let me share that with you. So the ashoke, they often, reflect, specific like Yoruba history. And that's, some of the symbolic meanings. They're used for special occasions, weddings, celebration of life, all of those things. And then also families often, will commission, ashoke for like specific events and milestones and all of that. And so you have an event and there's like, the bride's family maybe has a specific kind of ashoke with a specific kind of lace. And then really it's just our identity. Any Nigerian who sees this automatically knows that I'm from the Yoruba tribe. They don't need me to like say, oh, hey, here's who I am.
You just put this on and they know it.
Yeah. They just, and that picture I'd shared with you with the variations, you can kind of see she's got the gele right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she's also got the ikbele. So there's the gele and the ikbele. Now, usually the same ashoke material. Sorry, guys.
You will send me that picture. I'll put it on a digital.
Yeah. So she's got the, the kind, you see the man has sort of the corresponding outfit. And in the Igbo tribe, you can tell that's Igbo because of the actual, they've got this very unique fabric that's very much specific to the Igbos. And then she's also, the way her hair is done with the beads is also, that's like an Igbo kind of, style. And sometimes the Edos, they're like specific cultures that dress that way. And then same thing with the Hausas, like that hat he has on is very specific to the Hausas. And even the outfit that she has on and just the entire look of it.
That's so many details to remember. It's so fascinating. I wish I could talk to you for hours, Dami. Thank you so much for bringing all these beautiful items to the studio. Thank you so much for visiting me and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had fun.
Thanks for tuning into the American Dream Podcast. For more episodes, subscribe on your favorite platform, keep dreaming, and see you next time.